Every human mind has vulnerabilities, but one vulnerability dominates them all. It's like a super highway through the back door of your psyche for all kinds of influences. Addictions, ideologies, and companies can use that back door to gain access, root access into your mind. And if they're nasty enough, they can drain your energy like lifelong parasites. And the crazy thing is, you may never know that they're doing it. I'm going to explain what this mind vulnerability is and how to create a patch that upgrades your psychosecurity and protects your mind. So let's start at the beginning. Every human life begins inside of this necessary illusion. When you're young, your mom and your dad are like gods. They are your entire world. There is no one that you will look up to more than to your mother and father when you're small. Your entire universe is contained within them. And then reality breaks that illusion. Not all at once, not always consciously, but inevitably that happens. The people that you idealize are not who you thought they were. Their potential and their actuality aren't even in the same universe. And that realization can be brutal. For some people, it's mild, and for other people, it's catastrophic. But for everybody, to some degree, this happens. It's inevitable. So when a child's faced with that rupture, it has a choice. There's two options on the table. One of them is authenticity, being who they really are. And the other option is acceptance. Psychology tells us that a child will choose acceptance over authenticity every time. And this is for survival purposes. If a child were to choose authenticity, it would risk being ostracized from the family, from the tribe, and without resources, a child would never be able to survive. So to survive, the child has to lie. It has to sacrifice its own authenticity. And a child's authenticity is its reality. So the child sacrifices reality. They sacrifice themselves. And a split forms between who they are and what is true. And that split hurts. When you're a kid, you can't deal with that level of hurt. Because it hurts unbearably, and you don't have the tools to deal with it, that hurt is suppressed. And that suppressed pain becomes the foundation of everything that follows. The lie doesn't stay small. Over time, it compounds. You hang out with friends even though something tells you that it's not right. You marry someone who feels wrong, but you tell yourself it's not that bad. You accept labels that don't fit. You climb ladders that you don't care about. You numb yourself at night. You distract yourself on weekends. There are 1,000 variations of this, but the pattern is the same. The distance between self and reality grows, and underneath it all, the emotional pain accumulates. Pain that is never metabolized. Pain that threatens to overflow and leak out if you stop or if you're still for too long. And that pain quietly drives your behavior. Most lives, if we're honest, they're not built around growth. They're built around distractions from pain. So let's talk about the core trade-off. Now that we're adults, it's not authenticity or acceptance anymore. It's distraction versus truth. You can keep running from the pain, or you can choose reality. Running feels easier, especially short term, but it has a hidden cost. Avoided pain doesn't disappear, it multiplies. It leaks into everything, and soon it can dominate your life. Turning towards truth is entirely different. It requires turning backward and walking through the lies. Every lie that you were told, and every lie that you ever told. And the key thing is that hurts a lot more in the short term. So why would anyone do that? Running away from pain prolongs it, multiplies it. Turning and facing it actually concentrates it in that moment, so it feels awful. It feels a lot more uncomfortable, but there's an end to that pain. There's a resolution. So what caused all of this pain in the first place was actually a betrayal of reality. Now, you did that when you were a kid. It's not your fault. This isn't a time to cast blame. But the opposite of this process is actually falling back in love with reality. And at some point, something deeper begins to emerge. You develop a relationship with reality itself. You fall in love with the truth. You value alignment with it more than you value anything else. Approval, money, status. I think this is what is meant by integrity. I don't think integrity is necessarily something like a set of rules that you follow. It's more like a relationship that you will never betray. And even though we don't necessarily use these words to describe integrity, I think we all have a sense for this. We all feel it on some level. We admire people who tell the truth even when it costs them their job. even when their family disapproves, even when it means leaving a relationship. We ultimately cheer for someone who values the bond between themselves and reality. And when that bond is restored again, something happens. You come back to yourself, kind of like the prodigal son. And with that return comes an unshakable peace, stability. You have this reconciliation with parts of yourself that were lost before, that had to be broken off because you told a lie, because you had to break yourself off from reality. All right, so let's talk about this in the frame of psychosecurity. This is where everything locks together. If you don't understand this paradigm, then you won't be able to understand how the modern mind is attacked. Almost every psychological attack vector makes the same promise. You will feel less pain if you buy this, scroll through this, stay in this relationship, join this ideology, consume this content. The promise is always relief of some kind. As any good Buddhist will tell you, pain is not optional, and the belief that pain is avoidable, that is the greatest vulnerability in the human mind. And that belief creates this gaping hole in your mind, and companies and ideologies and addictions, consumerism, parasitic systems can walk right through it. So let me recap this vulnerability before I keep going, because it's really important to get this. So what ended up happening was you were born, you experienced splits in reality where you had to lie, and you experienced something that was so painful, this break from reality where you realized that your parents were not the gods you thought they were, that the world has fallen, and that your expectations and reality had a massive chasm between them. So you experienced something that was unbearable pain. And of course you weren't able to bear it because you were a kid, so you didn't have the tools. And so now you have a deep memory in your nervous system of unbearable pain. And so unbearable pain is a part of your reality. And if unbearable pain is a part of your reality, then it makes sense that you would be searching for some kind of a solution to that pain. Maybe on the surface level, the idea that there is some escape from your pain sounds like it wouldn't be that easy of a sell. It's actually the only thing that most humans can believe because they've experienced unbearable pain. So that's kind of like their Hail Mary. There must be some kind of an escape from this pain that I can't bear. And so people end up in this victim mentality. So have you ever seen a video or a movie where the odds are so overwhelmingly stacked against someone and they kind of have no choice but to just put all of their hope into this impossible thing? Maybe they're surrounded by an army that outnumbers them 1,000 to 1, and they know they're going to get crushed deep down, but they kind of have to hope that, maybe we'll still triumph, maybe a miracle is going to happen, and, lightning bolts are going to come out, and Zeus is going to come and clean all this up, and we're going to be saved. People put their hope into things that are impossible when they have no other option. And since most of us are carrying this idea that it is a reality. The reality that we have an unbearable pain. The unbearableness of the pain is what makes this an impossible situation. But the trick here is that it was unbearable. The truth is that it's no longer unbearable now. At least it doesn't have to be, because we're no longer kids. We're adults. And this is where we need to go back, circle back, and face those dragons that we experienced first, that kicked all of our butts when we were kids, and emerge victorious. This is the hero's journey. But this is the origin. This is the whole idea of where this deepest vulnerability starts. So I've got an analogy. Think about a cell. A healthy cell, it lets in nutrients and it expels waste. A virus can only invade if it mimics something that the cell might actually want. And ideas work the same way. Mind viruses don't force their way in. They disguise themselves as things that we want. And that deepest vulnerability of ours is that we want relief from pain. And if you believe that pain is avoidable because you had that unbearable pain, then your mind is vulnerable. Anything promising escape gets access to you, to your mind. And this becomes a feeding ground for the ideologies and the parasites and the consumerism and anything that wants to take advantage of you. All they need to do is figure out a way to package that same message, relief from pain. Now, the particulars of that packaging are going to be different for different people. Different things are going to hit the dopamine centers of different people and give them the illusion of an escape from pain. But underlying it all, it's promising an escape from pain. So let me tell you a reframe that I have learned around pain. If you can understand the role of pain, then it's not something to avoid anymore. It's something to use. So let's start with pain is inevitable, but let's think about pain as a currency. Living this life, you're going to pay a certain price. But the question becomes, what is your pain going to buy? What are you going to use it for? You can spend the pain deliberately, and you can build wisdom and strength, resilience. You can learn, you can grow. Or it's going to be hijacked and it's going to be spent on things that don't benefit you, like distractions, like propping up corporations, like giving energy and power to ideologies. It will be spent on consumption, on false promises. Your pain is going to pay for something. You don't want to waste it. So let's take a closer look at what actually happens in this chain of events, right? So we're going to, back to that cell analogy. It's like we zoom in on the surface of that cell. How does the mind virus gain access into our minds? Exactly how does that happen? And there are 3 steps to this. Step number 1 is sensation. The moment you wake up in the morning, and every moment of the day, you are experiencing sensations, right? We have our 5 senses plus a few others. We're constantly feeling our bodies against whatever we're sitting on or laying down against. We have emotions. We have sensations within our chest, within our head, within our throat. We're always taking in things, our eyes. And the next thing that happens is going to be a judgment. Now, the space between feeling something and that judgment is lightning fast. It happens so quickly that most of us aren't even aware that there's a distance between those two. And then once we get that judgment, and what I mean by judgment is you get a feeling of, maybe it's like a discomfort or an uneasiness, and not even consciously, but you label that as unbearable. You've got to do something about it. And so then what follows after that judgment is a compulsion. You think, I've got to fix this now. And that's when you go to food or Netflix or social media or name your escape of choice. So back to that first step. Most people aren't even aware that they are having a sensation. So then they react automatically. Sensation becomes reaction in the blink of an eye without much awareness. And that is how autonomy is lost. Freedom lives in that very narrow space between sensation and judgment. It's like in those medical dramas where someone's listening to a patient's heart and you hear that lub-dub, 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 and there might be one doctor that goes, I don't hear anything, it's totally normal. And then you have that other doctor that comes in and goes, wait, and listens a little closer, and maybe they can slow down the recording, and then they hear that critical second beat. It's kind of similar. We have this beat consistently of sensation. It goes sensation, judgment, reaction. The sensation judgment is so fast for most people, we don't even get it. So it takes some practice to figure out where that space is. And that space is where your freedom lies. That's the escape. Okay, so how do you discover this space, and then what do you do about it? So the key question to ask yourself is, what does this sensation feel like? Try to think about this as if you're talking to an alien scientist and they're really interested in what you're feeling. And words like angry, upset, kind of these generic things, they're not going to make sense to this alien. So you've got to be real specific. You might say, I feel a tightness in my chest, or a buzzing in my arms, or a heat, or a cold, or a clenching. It requires you to be still for a moment, and it's going to take some practice. But pay attention when you do this. Something really surprising will happen. You'll notice the sensation, and then the sensation will change. It will rise, peak, and then it passes. Most of the time I've noticed it takes between 10 and 15 minutes, maybe as long as half an hour. What I used to label as unbearable, I realized was actually quite bearable. With that realization, power suddenly returns to you. So the idea here is training the capacity to bear pain. So this belief, this deeply ingrained belief, it's so deep, I can't intellectually convince you of it. And you shouldn't expect your intellectual mind to be the one responsible for changing this belief, because it's not going to happen. This is such a deeply held belief that this is going to require evidence. And there's 2 ways that you can get evidence. One of them is memory, and the other is exposure. So let's start with memory. Recall moments when you've endured something and lived to tell the tale. Everyone has moments like this where they've overcome something difficult. And if you haven't had many moments of difficulty, you're at a disadvantage, truly. And if you're somebody that you've felt like you've been dealt a bad hand of cards your whole life, like this is your moment. You're going to be stronger and you're going to have a greater advantage over anybody else. And then the second way that you can do this is through exposure. In other words, you choose difficulty deliberately. This could be through physical training, cold, stillness, silence. At first, the physical discomfort will feel manageable, and the psychological discomfort will probably feel terrifying because it's an unknown. But when you strip away the story and just pay attention to the sensation, you'll notice that there are similarities between the two. They're not so different. And that's when you get a breakthrough. If you can endure one, you can endure the other. If you can endure going to the gym, doing a cold plunge, you can endure sitting, and you can endure a host of other things that bring discomfort. And so as you accumulate proof that you can withstand discomfort, this gaping hole in your mind that used to be the feeding frenzy of all the parasites and other ideologies, it slowly starts to close. And it closes as your belief that pain must be avoided weakens, because you know that you can bear the pain. So why would you need to avoid the pain at all cost? And that's the key. You start to see that the price that you would have to pay to escape the pain doesn't make any sense. Why would you spend your paycheck? Why would you spend all day or even a few hours scrolling through something or doing some meaningless activity or doing something that damages your health? You start to see through and you think, why would I pay that high a price when I can deal with the discomfort on my own? You'll notice that other people out there don't have the same level of clarity, and they're not even asking what the cost is going to be, because it doesn't matter, because they're in such unbearable pain that they're willing to pay any price. And so it doesn't matter what the price tag is. It doesn't matter if they're sacrificing their health, their wealth, their well-being, their relationships. No price is too high, because they're continuing to operate under this deeply held belief that they need to escape the pain. And so that hole that exists in their mind is going to continue to be exploited and exploited. Okay, so this sounds fine in theory, but how do you actually do it in practice? Like, you're sitting with yourself, but what does that actually mean? I remember hearing from other people that I needed to do this, and I was pretty new to it, and I didn't know what that meant. And so just sitting didn't seem like it was going to do very much. I did it, but I didn't really understand why I was doing it, what the point was. So I want to share an analogy of what the point of the sitting is. And I think if I had had this advice, it would have helped me. So picture a little kid that is playing on the jungle gym and he gets a splinter, right? Runs off, hurts really bad. Maybe you have some adults that want to take out the splinter, but the kid doesn't understand that it needs to hold still. It's got to stop wriggling and jerking around and trying to distract itself from the pain. That kid doesn't understand that in order to take that sliver out, there's going to be additional pain in getting the tweezers and trying to dig it out. The kid just doesn't understand. And that's really how we are. Every time we're thinking and ruminating about something, occupying our time with something to watch, to listen to engage our minds, it's the equivalent of that thrashing and squirming around, which does distract us. But the point of sitting is to focus in on where that pain is. Now, we're pretty lucky that the mind can surface what needs to come out and what needs to heal pretty intuitively. Not always, but in the same way that a body, if you get a sliver in your skin, or maybe you scrape yourself as you're running or on a bike, and you get some of that asphalt in your cuts, over time, that will make its way outside of your skin. So your body naturally expels these things. And there's a similar thing going on with the mind. If you can just sit, pay attention, and focus in on what the sensations are, that alone is enough for those sensations to actually start to expel what's going on underneath. And what will come up is more something to be experienced than it is to be comprehended. So again, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that does the thinking and reasoning, isn't necessarily going to grasp this idea that cures you. It's more going to be a feeling of the sensations and a processing of emotions. Now, I want to say one critical mistake that I see a lot of people make, and that I made myself, and it prevented me from making progress for a long time because I couldn't wrap my head around what I was really supposed to be doing. Okay, so I have things that are coming up in these sensations, and you might get memories of childhood. I know I did. There's a lot of pain associated with childhood, and that's where this vulnerability starts. But the mistake that everybody makes, that'll keep you trapped for years if you don't get it, is the processing of these events. Let's take a concrete example. Let's say you're in Little League, you're 5 years old, you're just swinging your bat, and you make a mistake, and your dad blows up at you, gets really mad, and says something thoughtless to you, and cuts you deep, really hurts you. Instead of processing that event as an adult, because I might be adult Josh looking at young kid Josh and going, all right, intellectually, from an adult's perspective, I can see that play out with a kid. And I can rationalize to myself, oh, maybe dad had a bad day, or maybe any number of things. But it minimizes this. To an adult, that's not the end of the world. But it needs to be processed from the point of view of the kid. You actually have to realize that this experience, this wound, happened to a child. And so to a child, dad getting mad and yelling at the child is something way worse than us adults can really comprehend. So an example on this might be, how would you react if you woke up tomorrow, you're going online, and your social media is blowing up, and you've got people that are messaging you all over the place, and for whatever reason, the whole world hates you. And there are pictures of you, and everyone's calling you a piece of shit, and they're coming after you. Whenever you leave the house, people are giving you these ugly glares and staring at you, and you're on the news, and that would be like worst nightmare for a lot of people. That sort of experience, that magnitude of experience, is the kind of experience that needs to be processed. Because to a kid, hearing that from their dad, remember, dad is God. Dad is like, there's nothing cooler, there's nothing better. There's no one that you look up to more than dad when you're at a certain age. To hear that, to be treated like that by such an individual is tantamount to the whole world turning cold and turning against you. We have to watch TV or a movie to see the kind of despair that an impending apocalypse would have on people. A meteorite's going to strike the earth in a week and watch the whole world lose their minds. Well, you see little kids losing their minds when they experience something to that magnitude, when mom leaves them, or dad abandons them, or dad gets mad at them, or any number of things. These experiences need to be fully processed from the point of view of a child. When I realized this, things started to click, and I realized why this was something that everybody avoided. If this is such a vulnerability, this is what I told myself, then why wouldn't more people want to fix this? Why wouldn't there be more people that had worked their way through it? And the answer is that it's so difficult. And the reason it's so difficult is the magnitude of this pain and suffering is greater than probably anything that you've experienced as an adult. Now, the silver lining in all of this is that you are now an adult. And so hopefully you have the capabilities, the tools to deal with this. You're not the same little kid anymore. And yes, you went through this as a kid and you were completely unequipped to handle this. You were simply unable to process this. But now as an adult, you're able to. And so you need to enter the child experience with the mind of an adult, with the capabilities of an adult. Now, there might be some of you that have experienced a lot of pain, way more pain than most people have. And for a long time, I had a hard time with this, thinking that life's unfair, and I had a hard time reconciling I felt like I had all of this ground that I had to make up, and I would look at other people that didn't have to go through all of this and were able to focus on things that they really cared about, like their careers and their relationships. To me, it felt like they were so much further ahead in life than I was. And those made me feel pretty hopeless sometimes. There's another frame that I've had on pain and on it as a currency. I mentioned this earlier. So let me have another analogy for you. I want you to imagine that you're in a store. Now, this is a store that's, let's say it's in outer space, it's an alien store. This is nothing like you've ever seen on Earth, okay? Now normally, on Earth, right, you walk into a store, you've got a certain amount of cash, you look at all the items, each item has a price tag, and you make judgment calls, put stuff into your cart, and you go to the cashier, and then you already know how much this is going to cost versus how much you have. And that's how you make decisions. But this store is totally different. And now this is my analogy to pain in life. So this store, as soon as you walk into the store, there's an arbitrary amount that's going to be deducted from your bank account. Okay, so imagine this. You go in there, you've got 2 friends with you, this weird, crazy store. It's massive, like the size of a planet. Everything imaginable is contained in this store, from the tiniest little trinkets to the most insane tech, incredible gadgets, anything you could ever want. So you're super excited, you walk into this with your friends, and as soon as you step in, you check your phones and you look at your bank balance. The friend on your left, it took $30 from her bank account, and the friend on your right, it took $300 from his bank account. And you look at yours, and it took $30,000 from your bank account. Now, pause. I know what you're thinking. What the hell is this? Why did it take $30,000 versus $30? This is unfair, right? What in the world's going on? But hang on. This store operates a little differently, right? So the thing is, as soon as you pay your amount, you can go into the store and choose anything you want. Anything you can find, it's yours. So that person, your friend that paid the $30, she can go and she might grab a sandwich and then make her way out. And maybe that's just an expensive sandwich. And if you did the same thing as her, then my goodness, you lost out a lot. That was terrible, a terrible experience. And yeah, it makes sense why you'd be complaining. But the reality of life is that you can actually go deeper into the store and you can find a spaceship, you can find a gold-plated Ferrari, you can find a mansion, you can find anything you want. If you were dealt a difficult hand in life and you find your bank balance subtracted $300,000 or $1 million, just know that to the extent that you've paid, to that depth within the store, you find yourself. And there are treasures to be found. The more that you pay in terms of pain and difficulty in life, the closer you are to unearthing the most valuable treasures. Treasures that it might take somebody else years to acquire, to even recognize that they exist. Treasures that might even be inaccessible to people that have an easy or comfortable lifestyle. If you have a bad hand, count it as a blessing. Start opening your eyes and look around, because there really are things that can rocket you into the stratosphere. Get rid of that victim mentality. Accept that this has been taken from you. Period. Done. Now the only thing that matters is, what are you going to make of it? Right? This goes back to pain is inevitable. Some people experience more than others. But the beauty is that your pain can buy anything. Be open. And the lessons and the treasures of life that you can use to your advantage and to everybody's blessing is within your grasp. All the more so if you've gone through crap. So if life's been hard, keep a lookout, because there are treasures around you. So this leads to the final principle here, which is one of my favorite sayings. That which you want most will be found where you least want to look. The greatest relief will be found in the greatest pain. And if you think about this in the physical sense, it's pretty intuitive. If you have a thorn in your foot, of course, if you pay attention to that pain and you go down there and you take out the thorn, you're going to experience your greatest relief. And yes, it hurts more to focus on it at first. Yes, it hurts to pull it out, but then it heals and you can walk again. Growing up is not avoiding pain. It's turning towards it. Pain is inevitable. Running shrinks you. Facing it grows you. Your pain will pay for something. Make sure that it pays for you.